afternoon. Unfortunately, it's in English now. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Carlos von Mühlen, on the one hand for the excellent organization of this SOPA meeting, and on the other hand also for inviting me to this meeting and the opportunity to share some data with you. Thank you very much for that. So, the topic of my talk today are the fever-causing arboviruses, dengue, chikungunya, Zika. The common geographic distribution of these viruses, as well as the similar clinical outcome, substantiate the need for some reliable, sensitive, specific assays. And this is exactly the focus of my talk. I'd like to show you data on that. Focus will be definitely on Zika, which is at the later part of my talk. All three arboviruses are transmitted by the same insect vectors. These are mosquitoes of Aedes genus aegypti, Arboviroses, others. We have heard it several times today. The areas with active Zika transmission are within the so-called dengue belt around the world. We have also seen similar pictures today. And now we have the same problem as yesterday. It's coming. So around 80% of infected people with Zika virus are without any clinical symptoms. If they develop symptoms, they are usually mild and usually fully resolved within just 1 or 2 weeks. Symptoms are very similar to dengue, chikungunya as mentioned, so just because of the clinical presentation, there's not a reliable differentiation possible. Medical complications in Zika virus infections are Guillain-Barré syndrome, microcephaly that triggered the emergency. All these cases, the steep rise of these cases in Brazil, and we already heard a very nice presentation on these complications by Dr. Sato earlier today. This is a time course of the virus infection, so usually average 6 days after infection, symptoms occur. A few days later, antibodies increase. The first antibody class which is shown, which is increasing, is typically IgM, which is afterwards, after some weeks, decreasing, and at the same time, IgG is increasing. Typically, viremia increases even before onset of symptoms. According to this time course of an infection, the different laboratory methods have also different utility, as you see here. There's a viremic phase, then typically IgM increases, and then IgG increases. I haven't had luck with my presentations. So what is possible in the early days? Because of the short viremic phase, there's a very narrow time window. Virus isolation, cell culture is possible, but this is quite laborious, time-consuming, and also insensitive. Method of choice in this phase is an RT-PCR, which is very sensitive, specific. Alternative to RT-PCR is antigen detection, for example NS1 for dengue. But the main diagnostic relies on the serological detection of antibodies, IgM, IgG, and this is because this short viremic phase, usually it's without clinical symptoms. So if a patient really seeks medical advice, it's already too late because viremia already decreases, RT-PCR may already be negative, so then we only can detect the antibodies. Just to focus a bit on the advantages, limitations of some technologies like RT-PCR, as mentioned, high sensitivity, high specificity, virus species and subtype identification is possible, but because of the short viremic phase, low viremia, that may lead to negative results. Alternative sources had already been mentioned, urine, semen, show a bigger time window for detection, maybe also more sensitive, but this is not in every case possible. Subclinical infections may not allow determination of symptom onset. Consequently, RT-PCR may be out of the secure time frame. That's what I just mentioned. So it's a widely accepted first-line test with high positive predictive value, but limited to the initial phase. Later phases, if they are negative, they need confirmation. Alternative antigen detection, this is currently NS1. This is currently only available for dengue virus. This is also a time screen when, at what days is which technology possible and more sensitive. As you see here, in the first days after symptoms onset, RT-PCR is most sensitive. It equals to the antigen detection in days 4 and 5, and then after day 6, 7, the antigen detection is even a bit more sensitive than RT-PCR. This is possible because infected cells secrete NS1. They are released to the blood, and inside the blood we can really measure this virus-specific antigen. Now some evaluation data. I'd like to start with the dengue virus NSA. This is an instant quality assurance panel from Germany, 19 samples, clearly characterized, 100% concordance to our NS1 ELISA. As mentioned, this is not the antibody, this is the antigen detection. Another evaluation that was a comparison study of 2 commercial assays, the PanBio NS1 ELISA together with the EUROIMMUN NS1 ELISA. You see here a high degree of concordance, 97%. We had a closer look at the discrepancies. One sample was positive in the PanBio ELISA but negative at EUROIMMUN. Follow-up samples were available. They showed no seroconversion, no antibodies developed. So most probably, best explanation would be that this is false positive. We had also a closer look at these 10 discrepant samples. They were positive in our ELISA, negative in PanBio. And again, the additional serological analysis indicated an active dengue infection because there was either an increase in IgM seroconversion to IgG, or in some cases first a low IgG and later on a steep, tighter increase, which is also a sign for a real infection. Nevertheless, even this is explained in favor of the EUROIMMUN ELISA. You see 97% concordance between both assays. Now I'm coming to serology. I would like to start with anti-chikungunya, then anti-dengue, and finally anti-Zika virus data. Anti-chikungunya virus ELISA GMM had been evaluated in the laboratory in France of Isabelle Lepard-Goffard. Pre-characterization of the samples was done in-house. These are for the specificity, that was really a challenge panel. Not just blood donors, but critical samples selected at that laboratory. And as you can see here in that table, highest sensitivity was seen for the EUROIMMUN ELISA, reasonable specificity and quite high sensitivity, all with respect to in-house assay. Whether the in-house assay is the truth, yes or no, it's not really known, but this is the way the study was analyzed. Some assays had a very, very low sensitivity. The other assay which came close was from IBL with chikungunya capture IgM ELISA, but IgG again was quite insensitive. Another study done at the CDC, also comparison of different manufacturers, just the IgM ELISA here. A drawback of that study was that various panels were used with various assays. You see it here in the numbers. The highest number were used with the EUROIMMUN assays, but it was not necessarily exactly the same panel, exactly the same samples. So that makes it difficult to compare it. EUROIMMUN assay had a specificity and sensitivity of 98%, but overall, AppCam, InBios, and the EUROIMMUN assays had equivalent performance to the reference assay at the CDC. Yeah, this is just a side note. Only the EUROIMMUN assay was evaluated in 3 different laboratories to see how reliable results are, and concordance values are very high, 95 up to 100%. But this was again not done with every assay, but only with the EUROIMMUN assay. This is a chikungunya IgG ELISA. Here I have some data from a reference laboratory in Padua, Italy. This was correlated to pre-characterization with plaque reduction neutralization assay. 50 samples were selected, clearly positive for chikungunya, and we had a sensitivity in the ELISA, IgG ELISA, of 96% with respect to plaque reduction neutralization assays. So we missed 2 samples. Chikungunya immunofluorescence, this was published by Barbara Johnson from the CDC. 2 different panels were tested. A panel from the CDC in the United States and another panel from the Caribbean Public Health Agency. What is quite odd is in this panel, the sensitivity was 92, but an extremely high specificity, but vice versa in that panel. So this may also reflect the different pre-characterization, but you see sensitivity, specificity is quite high for chikungunya immunofluorescence. So both dengue virus and Zika virus belong to the family of flaviviruses. They are characterized by a highly homologous structural protein on the surface, and this results usually in the production of antibodies with a high cross-reactivity. Chikungunya virus is a member of the Toga virus family. It usually do not cross-react serologically with the flaviviruses. So chikungunya serology is not that much a problem. It's mainly between dengue, Zika, and the other flaviviruses. Dengue virus IgG evaluation data that was done in a German reference laboratory, private laboratory, with 58 samples with suspicion for dengue fever. There was no more clinical characterization. It's just a comparison between 2 different established ELISAs in the market, EUROIMMUN, PenBio, concordance 97%. Dengue virus IgM evaluation that was done in Saudi Arabia in a laboratory. Again, samples sent to that laboratory with suspicion of dengue fever, and again the same concordance, 97-98% concordance to another established ELISA. That was already touched, this topic, by one of the previous speakers. In immunofluorescence, the company EUROIMMUN is working with a biochip technology. So we can code on large cover slips, tissues, antigen dots, cells, for example, infected cells. We let the cells grow on large cover slips. Afterwards, we cut it into very small pieces, what we call a biochip, and then we can use these biochips to combine them in an incubation field. This is a very easy way to make multiplexed assays. This is an example of a multiplexed assay where we combine Zika virus with chikungunya virus, so infected cells, dengue 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is just one example. If there's a need for further multiplexing, for adding other viruses, other whatever, we can code up to or place up to 16 different biochips in one incubation field. This is very easy. For immunofluorescence, it can be used to differentiate antibodies. It works quite well for primary infections, and in the end, the IFA endpoint titration can be used to discriminate between specific and cross-reacting antibodies. This is a typical example of a primary infection, IgM antibody. IgM in general are not that much of a cross-reactive, could also be IgG. You see it here, Zika infected cells are positive, and there is no or low-grade reactivity with dengue-infected cells. Sample titration, even if there is some, like here, some reactivity, a sample titration allows differentiation. The highest titer seen in that assay is a causative virus. A nice example, this is from the National Reference Center for Arboviroses in Germany, in Hamburg. This is also a WHO collaboration center. This is an imported Zika virus infection from Brazil into Italy, a traveler. We have high titers against Zika for IgG at day 4, day 26, even an increase in the IgG titer, high titer for IgM, but at the same time that also they use this arbovirus mosaic, the dengue virus titer very low, below 1 in 20 negative. So it works very well for these travelers for primary infections. Some data, characterization data of the sensitivity, specificity of the immunofluorescence mosaics. For sensitivity, usually some in-house methods were used. We got a panel to check sensitivity. Healthy blood donors were used to check specificity. And here you see all the data quite high, always above 95%. But this is not really a challenge panel. It's not like here in Brazil, an endemic area where you have multiple infections and a quite complex situation. In a secondary flavivirus infection, we do see a different antibody constellation. Of course, viremic phase the same. We have an increase in the Zika IgG, but if there has been, for example, a previous dengue, other flavivirus infection, these titers are boosted. We see at the same time also a high titer of dengue IgG, for example, and then there is a high cross-reactivity with dengue-infected cells within the immunofluorescence. IgM antibodies are more specific for Zika infections, but secondary flavivirus infections may show a delayed or missing production of specific IgA. We have also some of these cases in secondary infections that there is no IgM at all, or it's just very, very weak titers, and that should be shown here by this cartoon. One example, again from Hamburg, from the WHO Collaboration Center, a patient with a reported Zika virus infection, but before there was another, also dengue virus infection. And here you see in our immunofluorescence assay, we have a high titer IgG for dengue and a high titer, same titer for Zika IgG infection. The immunofluorescence cannot be used for differentiation, it just failed. Single-stranded RNA encodes for a single large polyprotein, which is then proteolytically processed into 3 structural proteins: the envelope E protein, membrane precursor PRM, and the capsid C protein, and 7 non-structural proteins from NS1 to NS5. The immune response in flaviviruses, especially in Zika virus, is dominantly seen again against the glycoprotein E. Sequence identity here is given from 42%, 58% between the different flaviviruses. But using glycoprotein E, it's also known there is an extensive cross-reactivity. During this year, we also established some prototypes based on glycoprotein E, and we saw a huge degree of cross-reactivity. The Zika virus NS1 protein has also a high degree of sequence homology. It's in the range of 50%, but there has been some experimental data, some publications indicating that NS1 may be a promising candidate to decrease cross-reactivity. That's why we already focused last year. We started last year, 2015, working on that ELISA. We completely focused on NS1 in order to reduce cross-reactivity. That was our idea. So we established an ELISA. It's a classical ELISA. We are coating recombinant NS1 antigen directly on the plate. We are using a bit different antigens for IgM and for IgG, but it's all NS1. It's no capture assay. First incubation, if antibodies are present, they bind to the antigen. Second incubation, a reporter anti-human IgG or IgM coupled to an enzyme, so classical ELISA. And now some evaluation data on the anti-Zika virus NS1 ELISA. First, I'd like to start with the specificity, and these are data we just published. This is our group here. It has been accepted, that paper, and we are now waiting more or less daily for the final publication. Potentially cross-reactive samples were used, more than 200, and healthy controls from different origin, more than 1,000. Yellow fever vaccination, West Nile virus, Japanese encephalitis, chikungunya, plasmodium, so malaria antibodies. We tested also 100 pregnant women and then healthy blood donors from different countries. For dengue virus, the reviewers of that paper asked us to differentiate it. So this is one group which was especially tested on IgM, 47 patients with clinical or with characterized dengue infection, and it's, especially we selected these 47 because they had extremely high titers for anti-dengue IgM. And you see here that the specificity is 99.6%. So in our hands, what we have tested, there's absolutely no cross-reactivity for IgM. And the same was true, and that was also quite a surprise for us when we start working on that in the beginning of the year. There's no cross-reactivity for IgG. The same was done, the same samples. The dengue is a different cohort, 46, with high titers of IgG class. But again, specificity 99.7%. Another study, these are real-time PCR characterized serologically confirmed dengue infections with various serotypes. And also here in this case, we have for both IgG and the IgM ELISA 100% specificity with respect to all 4 dengue virus serotypes. So there's also not a difference between serotype 1 to 4. That was the message of that evaluation. This is an evaluation done at another reference laboratory in Germany. They were also, after they saw the first results, they were very much interested in specificity of our assay. They used tick-borne encephalitis, dengue, yellow fever vaccination, HCV, and also samples with a polyclonal IgM response. And again, in that study, different samples than we used in our publication. Specificity was 100% for IgG, and we saw some false positive in the IgM ELISA with the polyclonal B-cell stimulation. But overall, quite surprising results, and Daniela Hutzli, she published it already in April in EUROIMMUN. Again, cross-reactivity, that was a study done by Dr. Thiel at the Mayo Clinic. And first she selected a number of dengue positive samples, anti-dengue positive samples, and we asked her, what is the rationale behind, what is the algorithm, why did you select these samples? Because they are positive in an anti-dengue ELISA. But being positive in an anti-dengue ELISA is not a proof of the absence of anti-Zika. These may be Zika infections, and Zika antibodies cross-react in anti-dengue ELISA. So anti-dengue positivity does not necessarily mean it's really a dengue infection. She selected her group or her panel of samples very carefully then. In the end, she tested 13 samples with a secondary dengue infection, very clearly characterized, and again, quite surprising for her, so far only published as an abstract, 0 cross-reactivity in these 13 samples. We tested for the evaluation potential interfering factors, rheumatoid factor positive samples, high titers of different autoimmune diseases, acute EBV infections, anti-plasmodium, I already mentioned that, and you see here we had for the IgM ELISA some false positive result. Nothing for anti-plasmodium, but this was also studied in a national reference center in the Netherlands, and they selected 20 samples with an acute malaria infection, and that was also quite surprising for us and for them. In an acute malaria, we had 20% false positives. But this is our cohort, this was not acute malaria, but these are patients with antibodies against Plasmodium. So obviously this is not the problem is the acute malaria. So, to summarize, an overall specificity of more than 98% with respect to other flavivirus infections as well as vaccinations allows specific determination of antibodies against Zika virus. In particular, no cross-reactivity was observed in all samples with confirmed presence of anti-dengue antibodies, allowing specific detection of anti-Zika antibodies in areas with high dengue virus prevalence. In cases of clinical signs of malaria, acute infections by Plasmodium should be excluded. This is to summarize the specificity data. Now I'm coming to sensitivity data. What should be done? How can we confirm really sensitivity? So best would be there's a confirmation of the infecting virus by real-time PCR. In our hands, we believe that IgM, IgG should be tested in parallel. Measurement of follow-up samples can be very helpful. In the beginning, there are low titers of IgG, and during the course of the infection, IgG titers increase. And of course, it's very important to check different samples from different origin. There may be differences whether it's a flavivirus endemic or a flavivirus non-endemic area. Time course, typical time course of a Zika virus serology primary infection is after some days after symptom onset, there's an increase in IgM titer and then again a decrease, and then a few days later in parallel an increase in IgG which stays constant. So titer increase of IgG. Sensitivity was checked at again in Hamburg, laboratory is shown here. IgM sensitivity in that cohort of samples was 90%, IgG sensitivity 79%, but interestingly, if we combine both Ig classes, we had a combined sensitivity of 100%. So all samples with Zika virus infection, all patients with Zika virus infections analyzed at the WHO center in Hamburg could be picked up with a combination of both ELISA. Another study, these are patients from non-endemic areas, 20 European travelers, Zika confirmed by PCR. We also had follow-up samples, and all patients showed a seroconversion and a significant titer increase of IgG. So just with IgG, we could pick up all of these patients. IgM, again, not 100% sensitivity, we only picked up 16, but 4 patient bleedings were not within the suspected time frame of IgM development. The first sample was taken months later, so that may be already a decrease in IgM. But again, combined sensitivity in this non-endemic area, 100%. This is from Hutzli again. Specificity was checked, but she would also like to test sensitivity. So 11 travelers, 11 patients with Zika infection, 10 samples were positive, so all of them. The only negative one was a German tourist 3 days after symptom onset. So this is best explained that it was just too early to detect IgM. But the other 10 all found clearly positive with the IgM ELISA. These are patients from flavivirus endemic areas. 37 residents of Colombia or the Dominican Republic. PCR confirmed Zika virus infection. Again, several bleedings are available. And in this cohort, only 43% showed borderline or showed positive IgM titers throughout the time course. So relatively low sensitivity. But all 37 patients, 100%, show seroconversion and a significant titer increase for IgG. So again, if we combine both G and M, we had 100% sensitivity. Why do we have a low IgM production in secondary Zika virus infection? Either IgM is missing, the titers are low, may also be that the time frame for positive IgM detection is very narrow in these cases. It can of course also be that our ELISA is not sensitive enough, but we do not have really a clear indication that the sensitivity of the ELISA is low. If we detect samples from non-endemic areas, we pick them up all with the IgM ELISA. So here's a clear difference in IgM sensitivity between endemic and non-endemic areas. To summarize that, in total we have from Europe 45 patients, sensitivity for IgM is 93, South America 37 patients, sensitivity for IgM only 43. And this is exactly, I guess, also what you are realizing sometimes in studies, that the IgM sensitivity is quite low. But if we include IgG and we check for titer increases, seroconversion, we pick them up to 100% in our studies. Why is the IgG detection important? 2 case reports. This is a patient from Colombia, again PCR confirmed Zika virus infection, steep increase in IgG and then quite stable titers. IgM not at all, nothing. A patient with a recent Zika virus infection, PCR confirmed, but no IgM development. One possibility, of course, is that our ELISA is not sensitive enough, or there is no IgM at all. We tested another patient, and that is also quite interesting. Here we had the possibility to check different assays. The NS1-based Zika virus ELISA from us is negative. The full virus-based IFA, so showing all antigens which are available, is also negative. The in-bios capture assay is negative, but there is a steep increase in IgG titer. And again here in immunofluorescence, there is a cross-reactivity, no cross-reactivity in the beginning for Zika virus IgG, and then after several days, steep titer increase, and by this we could confirm this is a recent infection without IgM. If this patient would have been tested according to the CDC algorithm, CDC is just focusing on IgM, this patient samples were within the time frame of the CDC algorithm. They say within 2 to 12 weeks, yes, done. Test serum, Zika IgM assay. We tested all available Zika IgM assay. Zika was negative, and then they say no further testing required, but it was a Zika virus infected patient for sure. To summarize all our studies, testing on all specimens collected after 6 days after onset of symptom revealed a combined sensitivity G and M of 100%. In case of missing anti-Zika virus IgM and clinical suspicion of ZIKV infection, follow-up sample has to be taken to check for anti-Zika virus IgG, seroconversion, or a significant titer increase. And during the viremic phase, so less than 6 days after onset of symptoms, PCR is of course recommended. So this is an acknowledgement. We are working with a number of laboratories all over Europe. Many of them, or all of them, are using also our assays. And I would like just to give an outlook on some further research. We are currently also working on some prototype assays, anti-Zika virus IgA antibodies. This is an established prototype. This is currently used in some reference center for evaluation. So we see also here samples without IgM development, but a steep titer increase in IgG. They also show the titer increase for IgA, which is quite interesting, I guess. And that could be another marker for further differentiation. I'm not quite sure how much time do I have. Is it still feasible? Another few minutes maybe. There was also some publications arguing that the avidity testing could be a powerful tool to discriminate past infections from recent infections. So determination of IgG avidity is a common tool for pregnancy diagnostics, for example in TORCH. Can avidity be used to distinguish between an acute and past Zika virus infection? That's a question. In one of the last publications from Landry from the United States, it was mentioned it would be good if such an assay is available. We have it already established in our laboratories. Just what is avidity? Why could avidity be used? It's a maturation of IgG. First we have IgM, a bit later IgG develops, and the first IgGs are not perfectly matching to the antigen. There is a maturation, and after some weeks the avidity becomes higher for that antigen. This is explained here. If we have a low avidity antibody, so in a recent infection, very early stages of IgG development, it does not perfectly match to the antigen. If we incubate the plate with urea, we can disrupt the binding. After maturation, a perfect match, high avidity, if we incubate with urea, the binding remains stable. That's the principle behind. So the ELISA protocol is just two wells in parallel, well A with a buffer incubation, well B with urea incubation. And this difference can be evaluated. We call it the relative avidity index, and if the avidity index is below 50%, it's an indication of low avidity antibodies, above 50% indication of high avidity antibodies. And this is just an example of how it works. It works perfectly. For example, EBV, very well established, used in many laboratories. All the fresh and recent infections have low avidity antibodies of IgG class. All the past infections, high avidity antibodies of IgG class. Another example in rubella, which may be a challenge in pregnant women. Is it a recent infection? There is IgG, and here we can also differentiate between primary infection, recent vaccination, persistent IgM, or previous infection just by avidity testing of IgG. Very powerful tool. We have done that with some samples we have available. In the first flavivirus contact, primary infection avidity determination seems to be suitable. In all cases with previous flavivirus contact, for example due to a dengue virus infection, avidity is high after just a few days, so there is not really a maturation. But these are some experimental data in our hands, unpublished. Avidity determination cannot be recommended. That was a conclusion of one of my head of the departments. It needs, I guess, further evaluation, and I'd like to encourage you. This assay as a prototype is available. We just have very limited amount of samples and not well characterized samples in Europe. Unfortunately, Brazil is Zika land, so we have some tools, and maybe we can do also some research with these new assays. Thank you very much. Just some impressions from my hometown, Lübeck. You see it here from above. It's a very nice old town, an island. There are very old gates into the old town. Some impressions, and this is a landmark, a gate from 1458. Quite old. Thank you very much for your attention.